In the still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you.
How could she? She cried silently. Tell him that when all she wanted to do was go into his arms and have him hug her, kiss her, and soothe her, but she couldn't do that. She didn't want to be played for a fool again. You can't mean that? He sounded astonished. Hearing the surprise in his words gave her a surprising boost, and she turned to face him firmly. I do, because Uche can never trust you again. What is love without trust? She turned her back on him again. There was no way she could face him and have the heart to tell him all that she wanted to tell him. She was surprised to feel his hands around her. She knew then it was all over. His hands felt so wonderful, and she actually leaned back and rested her head on his wide chest. Uche turned her around and began to kiss her tenderly at first. But when he remembered that he had almost lost her, he kissed her harder, marveling at her response. Oh, how he wanted her. He didn't know if he would be able to stop this time around. But he must stop, he decided, or she would conclude that this was another calculated attempt to get her back. Oh, she felt so right in his arms, and he went on kissing her. Mma responded to his kisses with abandonment. She missed him, and the 2 weeks they were apart was not a joke. She could feel herself straining to get closer to him. It was as if she couldn't get close enough to him. Oh, how I love this man, she sighed, and that brought her back to earth. How could you, she said to herself. How could you love him still and respond to his kisses so shamelessly after all he had done? She asked herself silently. This must be another calculated effort to deceive her. Then his words came back to her loud and clear. I would have taken advantage of your inexperience. I would have overwhelmed you with my experience, and it would have been easy. She didn't want to remember more, so she stopped responding and became still. She was not going to dignify his efforts by struggling, she decided. Uche sensed her withdrawal and let her go. He knew he had frightened her. I am sorry I was. You've proved to me that you could have had me without marriage. You only had to use your experience to overwhelm me, and I will forget myself. But surprised are you? You couldn't. And you know why? I have grown up. I grew up the minute I saw Angela on your bed. Haven't you heard a word I said? He asked harshly. I did. I need time. Time? What does that even mean? Uche knew he sounded desperate. He didn't care. The thought of losing her was unbearable. I need time to sort it all out. If you'd please excuse me, I have work to do. Uche was bewildered by the change in her. He saw her rigid stance and knew he would not get through to her. It was like she never loved him. Then he could feel his own temper rising. How could she choose not to trust him after all he had sacrificed to be with her? He had accepted her the way she was, changed his lifestyle so he could be with her, and never in all that time did he give her a reason to doubt him. He couldn't get a hold on his temper no matter how much he tried. Now I understand. That sin was what you have been waiting for. Now you have a reason. I mean, your triumph is great. You have succeeded where others have failed. You dumped the formidable Uche Okoha, he said bitterly. That's not true. You are turning everything to suit your wounded ego. Save your breath. I am leaving, but bear this in mind. You will realize the truth one day, and you will beg me to take you back. And I will have the last laugh, he said, walking out. Mma stood still, seething. Then it dawned on her that he was gone. I may never see him again. She turned and ran to the door and threw it open, but he was already gone. She slumped on the couch and sighed bitterly. The tears began to flow again. I will survive, she told herself. I must. I have to. How was she going to live without him? She asked herself. How was she going to stop this blinding pain in her heart? She asked again, drying her tears. Oh, help me, I can't bear this alone. She also wondered where Angela was and what she would be doing. She thought of how she had hurried off when she commanded her to. Surely something didn't fit. Could Uche be telling the truth after all? She thought, confused. The next few days that followed, Mma was all but dead. Nothing seemed to matter to her anymore. Her business, sewing or sketching out a design. Nothing mattered to her anymore because Uche was no longer a part of her life. She wasn't getting over him either. Rather, she was falling deeper in love with him each day that passed and hating him the more for it. He never came back. He never called. For days, she did nothing but wait her phone to ring, listening to the sound of cars and hoping against hope that one of the cars would turn out to be his. But that didn't happen. It seemed as if he had forgotten her already. Maybe he had gone back to Angela. It hurt. It still hurts so much. She sighed, getting out of bed. He might actually be waking up beside Angela this morning and maybe kiss her good morning while she was here dying. Stop it! Stop it! She screamed at herself. Stop punishing yourself more than you're already suffering. Haven't you suffered enough? She asked herself. Uche is not worth it. But her heart was screaming at her. It is a lie, a wicked lie. He is everything that matters to you. He is the core of your existence. He is your life and the only love you will ever know. Mma didn't deny the truth in the words her mind screamed at her. She loved Uche, and nothing could change that. Not even the knowledge that he was sleeping with another woman, she thought wearily. Too bad the knowledge was just dawning on her then, or she would have forgiven him when he asked. She was so tired and weak. She couldn't remember the last time she ate. She had lost weight, and all the shining radiance had gone from her face. She walked to the mirror and stared at herself. She looked all but dead, she thought. There were hollows on her cheeks and bags under her eyes, and she felt worse. Her stomach rumbled, obviously asking for food, but the thought of food put her off entirely. What kind of life is this? She asked herself. At 26, what did she ever do to deserve to suffer this way? I can't go on like this, she groaned. Who would have thought that she and Uche would end up like this? People who had seen them together would never believe this. She sighed, turning away from the mirror. She had to get to work today. Everybody would be wondering what was wrong with her. For days, she had rarely shown her face at the boutique, and when she did, she didn't spend much time. It was as if she was avoiding people. But of course I'm avoiding people, she said to herself. She didn't want anybody seeing her withdrawn look and asking questions that would undo her. She knew she would have to face them eventually. She was here to tell Felix and Tessie and even Helen what happened. Maybe because she didn't want their pity or even an I told you so from Felix. She shook her head sadly and went to take her bath. Mma got ready for work. She took a long look at herself in the mirror. She had done a good job in disguising her pain. She had also made up her mind she was going to tell Phyllis about the breakup today. Nobody had asked about the ring. Maybe none of them had noticed that she was no longer wearing it. Mma got to work and went to her office first to pull herself together before she faced Helen. The girl would surely notice that she was no longer her usual cheerful self, or the lack of ring on her finger. This is ridiculous, she muttered. I cannot continue like this, or I would lose all I have ever worked for over that cheating beast. She fumed, furious with herself. Resolutely, she got up and walked to the door. Just calm down and be strong. Now paste a smile on your face, good, she muttered as she opened the door and closed it behind her. As she got to the studio, Helen looked up from the cutting table and gave her a bright smile. Look who decided to show up. Mma smiled back and walked into the room. So you are still alive and on this earth? Helen continued beaming. Mma's smile faltered a little when she saw how happy Helen looked and sounded. Of course I am still alive and on this earth, Mma replied quickly, getting back her composure. So why have you been hiding 7 days to your show? How was she going to explain to her that what seemed like the whole world to her meant nothing to her anymore, all because of one man? I had other important things to do elsewhere. No doubt with Prince Charming, Helen smiled. Mma's face fell at the reference to Uche, and she couldn't reply. She just stared at Helen with streaking face. Did I say something wrong? Helen asked, taken aback with the look on her face. No, nothing is wrong, she stammered, going quickly to inspect what Helen had done. You've done a lot here. I didn't expect this much, she said, trying to change the topic. Yes, before I forget, that Petals woman came here to remind us that she'll be needing her orders by the end of next week. Didn't I tell you to get the girls working on it? Yes, they are working on it. and most likely it will be ready. Helen replied, a little surprised by her outburst. So why is she bothering us? Since when did she have to remind us of our duty? This is the last order I'm taking from that woman. Then she groaned inside after her outburst. Why was she taking her anger out on poor Helen? It wasn't her fault. It was Uche's fault. But Helen was trying so hard to remind her of Uche when she was trying equally hard to forget him. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bite your head off. Is everything alright? Nothing. I am alright. I will be alright, she said nervously, going over to the newly arrived fabrics. When did these arrive? She asked, meaning to lighten the air. Yesterday. Helen turned back to her work, meaning not to press her anymore. She was sure that whatever was bothering her, she would talk about it when she was good and ready. She understood that sometimes you needed to keep things to yourself. Wasn't she an expert in that? If Uma learned the truth about her, Helen shuddered at the thought and concentrated on her work. Uma used the silence to pull herself together. Stupid, she called herself. If she was this fidgety with Helen, what would happen when she faced Phyllis? Better to put off that particular task till she was ready, she decided cowardly. No, I have to get it over and done with, she told herself, but she couldn't make herself to take one step in doing that. She wondered if Uche had broken the news to his family and how they were taking it. Well, they might not be surprised. They should know what a womanizer their son was, she thought bitterly, trying hard to concentrate on the job at hand. How are the rehearsals with the models coming up? Helen asked. She was a bit worried, though she was determined not to press, but she could feel that something was dreadfully wrong with Uma. Forgetting the models' rehearsal was one thing, but how could she forget to come for their fitting? She was very worried and helpless. Oh, that? I will book another appointment with them tomorrow. Uma got up to hang the gown she had made before and left for the workers to finish. Then Helen noticed and spoke without thinking. Oh, Uma, Helen cried. Startled, Uma dropped the gown, looking around for anything harmful, but Helen already had her hands around her. Why didn't you say something? You broke up with Uche? How did you know? Uma asked, choking back tears. I put one on one together, the way you've been behaving recently, but I wasn't sure till I saw your bare finger. I'm so sorry. If I'd known, I would have kept my big mouth shut, but all I did was remind you of him. It is not your fault. I can't believe it. I can't still believe it. I'm so sorry. What happened? He finally called his signature tune. Not Prince Charming. He loves you. And what could he possibly want from another woman anyway? Helen, you don't know how much I've suffered these past few days. At a point I wanted to die. Oh, don't say that. Surely there must be an explanation for what happened. Not good enough. Oh, Helen, you can't begin to imagine how I felt. I thought I would die from it. She began to sob again. It's okay. Hush. These things have a way of taking care of themselves. Helen didn't ask for details. She felt that if Ma wanted to tell her, she would have told her without her probing. She thought, comforting and consoling her till her sobs died down. Silly me, I've messed up your blouse, Ma said with an attempt on a smile. Nonsense. Think nothing of it. Besides, what are friends for? Ma felt lighter having shared her burden. She was grateful that Helen didn't probe. She managed to pull herself together, accepting the words of tissue given to her by Helen. She blew her nose and sat down, trying to build up the energy to resume working. One hurdle crossed, two to go, she thought, and picked up her scissors and started cutting a fabric, trying to concentrate, but it was proving difficult. She was acting like a coward and she knew it, but there was nothing she could do about it, except shedding the cowardice skin and marching off to Felix's office and telling him how right he had been about Uche. I have to see Felix, Mama said absently, but making no move to get up. Helen gave her an understanding look. I take it he doesn't know yet? No, he doesn't. But I can't keep it hidden forever. I should tell him. Just be strong and remember it's not your fault. These things happen, you know. Mama smiled gratefully and got up to go see Felix. She was surprised to find Felix not alone when she got to his office. There was a young man in dreadlocks and earrings with him. She wondered what problems he could be having with a customer. "Ma, dear you are," smiled Felix. "I was going to call you to meet a friend. His father and I go way back. Mike. He just came back from the US and couldn't believe that this place is owned by a 26-year-old girl. Mma was taken aback. If only Phyllis knew, he wouldn't be beaming and smiling at her. "Hi, I am Mma." She managed to smile. "What's up, sis?" the man said loudly. She smiled and managed to reply, "I'm fine. Phyllis was telling me how you started and what you do. It is really great. He also told me you are like a daughter to him. Phyllis is not old enough to have me as a daughter. Enough on Phyllis. Why don't I take you out for lunch and get to know you better? Sorry to disappoint you, Mike, but Mma is as good as married. We should look elsewhere." Phyllis smiled. If only he knew, Mma thought ruefully. But she's not married yet, and it is not as if we are eloping. He turned to Phyllis. "Come on, Felix, don't you trust me?" He smiled and turned to Mma with a charming smile. "Won't you have lunch with me? I'm sure Uche is coming to take her out for lunch. Quit wasting your time." "Phyllis, it's just food," said Mma. "Don't mind him. He is blast from the past. I'll get my purse." She excused herself. Mike took her to an impressive restaurant. As soon as they sat down, she felt that someone was looking at her, but when she looked around, she saw no one she recognized. She turned to her partner and gave him a dazzling smile. "So," Mike began, "you know, I actually saw your picture in Phyllis's office and I cajoled him into introducing you to me. I am quite flattered. What was that nonsense about you being engaged? Your fingers are naked." "I was engaged, but Phyllis doesn't know that we've broken up. It happened a few days ago," she said, stealing her emotions successfully. "You are not acting like someone whose heart has just been broken." "Well, I can't turn back the hands of time, so why kill myself?" she said, with a sureness she did not feel. "What went wrong?" "The same old story. Men can't be trusted," she said, unwilling to tell her story to this perfect stranger. "Not this man, baby," he said, picking up her hands and kissing it. "Everything about you says you can't be trusted," she said, removing her hands from his. He smiled coolly. "With time, we shall see." "Sorry, but I don't think I have the time to find out." "We shall see," he said and smiled and beckoned on the waiter. A smart-looking man in uniform hurried to their table. Mma ordered her food, not really interested in what she ordered. The waiter moved away and her eyes followed him idly, but it stopped and widened in shock as Uche's angry eyes locked with hers.
In the still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you. You're the one I can't let go. In your arms I find my home, love.